Hello and welcome back to AC's Make and Repair. Well, continuing on in the, well, I wouldn't call it a series, but continuing on with using recycled pallet timber to make different things. This is one of the main support rails off a pallet. These are approximately 3.5 by 1.5 inches or 90 by 40 millimeters. These are what support the top slats that go across the top of the pallet, also the ones that brace the bottom, but they support the top slats. You've seen me use the top slats, and you'll probably see me use more of them in the future. These are quite good pieces of timber to use, quite solid pieces, and today I'm going to show you how I made a solid little stool, a little step-up stool, approximately a foot high, out of some of this timber. And it was a delight to use this timber. It's a shabby chic sort of design. It'll be painted, this item, and clear coated with some water-based clear varnish. And I'd like you to come along with me today and I'll show you how I did that, and I hope you enjoy it. So here's an old pallet rail. I'm just going to, I've already ripped the edge off because it was damaged. I'm going to cut this down. This is going to be the top of our stool come stand, the plant stand. I'm making 240 square, the top, and I'll go and cut that now. So here's our 4 boards. I will glue them up and clamp them together like that. And then I'll get my top out of that. I may even leave it rectangular, I don't know yet. But I'm going to have the legs slanting slightly. So we'll just go and do that now. I'll go and glue that up. And once I've got that glued up, I can put that aside and I'll work out what I want to do for legs. For those who are wondering, I'm using Titebond 3 here. Had really good success with it. I can't believe how good it is in wet weather. I did glue a whirligig up with it once, and look, that whirligig's still going to this day, and it spent many a year out in the weather. So amazing stuff. Very weatherproof that way as a glue. Alright, we'll just leave that now. Because it's a rustic piece, we don't really have to worry about how that looks a bit. Just has to be fairly flat, which it is. Yeah, it's fairly good. Alright, I'll just put that aside now. Alright, I've got another piece of wood here. I'm going to use that for the legs. I'm going to make them half that thickness in squareness. They're going to be rough sawn too. So I'll go and cut them now. Now I'll go and cut them to length. I am going to make it roughly 240 millimeters high too. So it's going to be as high as it is wide. And we will trim probably that just to get the legs nice and flush with the floor, but I'll go and cut them now. Actual finished size is 280 millimeters high, 300 millimeters long by 240 wide. Alright, so we have our legs cut. I'm just going to work out some lengths for my legs to be. They're going to go in between, for some brackets to go in between my legs. I've worked out an angle. It's roughly 10 millimeters splayed at the bottom. I'll just make sure you can see that, what I mean. Yeah, at the bottom, the legs will be overall 20 millimeters wider at the bottom, or 3/4 of an inch roughly wider at the bottom than at the top. I'm going to use another piece of pallet wood here, of which I've planed the back, straighten one edge and parallel the other edge, and I'll cut some brackets out of that. And I'll just scallop on both sides. I'm going to biscuit as well as dowel, just to make it a little bit stronger because it is a stool. And that's what we're going to do. So what I try to do is make the bottom width of my legs the actual width of the stool seat top. That helps with stability of the stool. The angle that's cut on the end of these brackets is the angle that I showed you before with the sliding bevel. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually scallop the bottom and the top out of these a bit. That's going to facilitate my dowels at the top and dowels at the bottom. The biscuit can go on the side, that's no problem. Biscuit's basically just for locating. This is a bit narrower than my legs, which I wanted, so it steps back in a bit, about 5mm, just to add a bit of design to it. Yeah, so I'll just mark that out now. Just basically, it will be basically about that far down on either side. The scallop will be, and probably about the same distance in, because I've got some dowel there. I'll see if I've got actually raw dowel. So what will happen is my dowel will go in like that into my leg. I'll drill a hole in from this side here at the top there, and it'll go into the leg. I'll put two, one on either side if I can. Just freehand them in, that's no problem. And like I said, a biscuit will go in there somewhere too, in the middle, which is not a problem either. So that's that. I'll mark them out now. A little bit of a scallop in the top and in the bottom. So just to facilitate that. Nothing fancy. Just something like that there. Something like this here. And at the top, very similar. Well, you don't have to worry about that. But so it's just going to be marked out, cut out. I'll cut that out with the band, so I'll do one and show you what it comes up like. So basically this is what I will have, and it'll be doweled through there into there like that somewhere, and vice versa down the bottom here into there like that. There will be a biscuit just to align it down on the bottom corner here somewhere, and I'm tossing up whether to go two 6mm dowels or stick with the because they're fairly fat. I'll work that out in a minute. I might be able to go longer dowels across it. Okay, so I've worked out, I have some 6mm dowel, and I can put them in. I'll put them in on a sort of like an orientation like that, through that there, and I'll put 4 in each, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, so it'll something like that, and that should give it a fair bit of strength. They're hardwood, they're Tasmanian oak dowel, so they're fairly strong. But what I'll do is I'll put my biscuit in just to locate, get a brad nail, just brad nail it, let it glue for a bit, and then I'll come through later and drill the 6mm hole and screw those in. So I'll go ahead now, and I'll go and do 2 side frames, two end frames, and 2 side frames, then glue the sides in and go that way too. Alright, so it's just a matter of cutting a biscuit groove. So I've cut a biscuit groove in this one, and I'm going to go through and cut the whole lot of them now, and then I'll go and cut the top parts corresponding. So I just use a shim, a piece of plywood in this case, so height that I feel is good. That's roughly centre, which is good. And I go through now, and I'll just do the rest of these. Then I go through and do the corresponding ones on these, and I know the mark, so I'll mark those out at the same distance, and that's your biscuits done, and it's quite effective. Just going to mark all those out. Alright, so I'm going to start assembly now, and I'll go through and I'll biscuit those into place, and then I'll go through and I'll just put a brad nail in the centre there somewhere just to hold them, so I can come through later and dowel them, and that'll be the easiest way to go. I'll glue it all up, then I'll come through once it's dried off a bit and I'll drill and dowel those with those two 6mm dowels top and bottom. I'll just go and wet my rag, but that's basically how we get it done. I'll make up two of those, then I'll have to trim these corners down later. Look at that, haven't cut that out. Okay, now I've got to go and put the side ones in. So that's pretty basic now. It's just a matter of gluing both sides up, and put them together. I will try to nail these as I go too. Alright, there we have our basic frame. We'll get a couple of clamps and just, oh no, probably don't need them. Make sure that it's stuck together pretty well, looks pretty good. So that's our basic frame, and that's our top there that goes on it eventually. And I will have to get that wobble out of it a little bit. I'll trim the bottom of those legs to make them dead right. One's probably a little bit longer than the other, that's all that'll be. So there we have it. I can't do any more on that right now, but that's a nice little strong frame once I dowel it, that is. Okay, so somehow I missed videoing the doweling process. I basically skewed the dowels in on an angle, roughly a 45-degree angle or something like that. Here you see me trimming the heads of the dowels off, and then I go through with a rotary rasp that goes in a cordless drill, and I just smooth them back flush with the profile, the curved corner there, and I'll sand that later too on the oscillating sander. Here I've made up some little galvanised tin brackets to hold the top down. They're amply strong enough, but I would have preferred to use timber buttons to hold the top down, but because of the scallop I couldn't. Here you see me measuring in equal distances around the edge before I fasten them. You may see me placing a cardboard shim between the bottom of the bracket and the bottom of the seat. This allows a little bit of a gap between that bracket and the seat. I take that shim out and then I screw it down, which gives it a tighter clamping force. Okay, so I've beveled the top of the seat with the little router bit with the 45-degree bit in it. I'm giving a rough sand here. I don't sand it too harshly. I want some of that grain to still be there, that grain that's sticking up, so I get the detail when I sand it back after the 2 paint coats, as you'll see later on. You want that to show through. I do trim the legs after this, as you'll see in a second. This is how I trim the legs to get them nice and flat on the surface. The top of the seat is actually parallel to the tabletop, so I go around with this little, it's about 5mm thick, this board, and I mark a line all the way around the leg, and I go through with this saw and I trim them according to that mark, and that gives the exact angle, the exact same distance that needs to come off to make it nice and flat on the floor surface. Okay, so now we're on to painting. After I've puttied, so I'll go through and I'll putty any major holes that can't be filled with paint, and I sand them back, not sanding away too much of the grain texture. And then I put down, this is the secondary colour, so this is the non-dominant colour. This is the colour that you want to show through as the weathered appearance in this type of furniture. So the dominant colour you always put on second, I find. This is what I find. Other people might do it different to me, but I find if I want the dominant colour that I want, I put that on secondary. Now you might choose that you want several colours as secondary colours. So you might want to put a green like this, or even a red or a yellow, making it look like it's been painted several times over the years. So you might want to put different splashes of colour throughout your little piece, or your piece, before you put your dominant colour over the top. So here I'm putting a fairly darker green coloured as my secondary colour down first. It's my base coat. It's a water-based acrylic. For this sort of thing it works fine. And I go through, and I do paint under the seat here, as you can see. I do not put my secondary colour underneath where I don't see. I don't waste time or paint, just painting where I don't need to. But I'll go through now. You'll see me put this primary colour, the secondary colour down, and then the dominant colour over the top. So we'll go through that now, and I'll fast forward through that. Now I'll go through and sand it. I'm using 120 here with the block. And you need the block because it helps bring out highlight the grain in the timber below it. That's why I strongly recommend not sanding it too much before you use it, because the grain that has swollen up over the time on the pallet, it shows up when you sand it back like this. This is ideal for this type of work. I sand with the grain and across the grain depending on where the grain needs to be shown more. Like I said, I'm using a 120 here at the moment. I'm sanding where the edges are because that's where it would have been worn if it was an old piece of furniture. And I try to bring out that sort of character in it. Now, it doesn't hurt if you accidentally go through your secondary colour into your timber here and there. I wouldn't recommend you go through it all over the place, but here and there is not a problem. And it really comes up quite good if you use this. So the sanding, what it does is bring out the secondary colour through and gives it that weathered appearance. So I'll go through and fast forward through that too now. So now it's onto a clear coat. I'm using a satin water-based varnish. It's basically like a PVA clear. Smells so much like PVA, and I think it is. But nevertheless, it works well for this type of thing. This is a satin finish, like I said. I do go ahead and I do 2 coats. I think I missed some of the footage here doing all the coats, so I'll just show you part of this. One thing I do need to say is, as you paint or as you clear coat, make sure you go over your paint and everything like that and tip off carefully so you don't want any runs or any build up, because this does take away from this good look. It does affect the finish of it, and it makes an untidy finish if you have big runs, etc. So do take your time not to have big runs, and do go over it when you're finished. Each coat, and just tip off lightly with the tips of the brush with a dryer brush. Dry your brush out a bit on the edge of your pot and go over and tip it off. And it does come up far neater. This is another tray I did with the leftover baseboards from the last project. and I painted this one instead. And I also rebaited the base. So I put a rebate groove in underneath on the base instead of using the blocky out idea. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little video of the manufacture of this little stool. You could do your own design for sure, by all means, and make it to the way you want to make it, the height you want to make it, etc. I just did it this way this day. I probably should make one a little bit higher. I like using ones that are about 18-inch high, but this one here I just did it to show you guys what you can do. You can make them more ornate than this too. Doing it again, I'd probably change the way I buttoned it to the top. I probably wouldn't put that scallop in next time. I'd probably just put a groove in behind and button it down with timber buttons, and that would probably be a lot solider. Having said that, they're very rigid, those little straps I've made for what they are. Anyhow, if you liked the video, please, by all means, hit the like button. I really appreciate that. It helps the channel along. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Look through my playlist there. There's plenty of things there that you may be interested in to view. But I appreciate your viewing. Share me with your friends if you wouldn't mind. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.